How's it going, guys? With a lot of you being fans of Halls of Torment and all the videos I've been making on that game, I wanted to go ahead and introduce you to another fantastic game in the genre that I think you'll really enjoy, and that's going to be called Soulstone Survivor. Soulstone Survivor is that same like crazy action, roguelike, bullet hell type game. Very similar to Halls of Torment, but with a little bit of a quicker pace, as well as a different art style and like class style, but it's really, really fun. It doesn't have that, play to 30 minutes and then you're done after killing a boss. It has more of a wave type system, basically, where you level up throughout the game and then you're actually able to go on to multiple different modes, like endless mode, where you can just play forever until you die, as well as an endless mode that like doubles the difficulty and health and things like that of all the mobs and bosses, which is really fun. And there's just a ton of classes, weapons, runes, and abilities that are just really enjoyable. So I wanted to introduce you to this game and kind of explain why I think you might like it. So like I had mentioned, Soulstone Survivors has a ton of different characters. Now these characters are going to be just like the characters in Halls of Torment. All of them have different abilities, and in this game there's actually different weapons. So depending on the weapon that you have equipped, you're going to have a different starter ability basically. It also, depending on what character you're playing, forces you into specific skills that are more likely to drop. So like there's a pyromancer, you're more likely to get fire type skills for that. It doesn't mean you're only going to get fire type skills, but just means they're going to show up a little bit more. There are several different rarities of weapons, going from common all the way to epic, and there's going to be legendary in the future. They're still working on them right now. And you get materials as you're playing the game, and that's how you craft these weapons. Now these weapons are going to change the stats that you get for your character, as well as the ability that your character starts out with. You're going to make all of these weapons at the blacksmith, and it's very straightforward. Tells you what materials you need. When you go into the map selection, the map will tell you what materials drop on those maps. And then you'll use a specific type of material to create them. Now we also have runes. Runes are really simple, very straightforward. You unlock these by playing the game, getting achievements. There's a wide plethora of runes, as you can see, with a bunch actually currently locked that they're going to be creating in the future. And as you progress through the game, you unlock these. Now these runes basically just make it to where you're able to get specific things that you want. Maybe you want to use more ice type, or maybe you want to focus on shadow. One of my favorite runes actually lets you equip 6 of the same abilities. So you can actually use one ability but 6 times, and so you're gonna have a ton of the same weapon. Really, really fun. And you have this thing called runic power, which kind of limits how many runes you get equipped. You unlock runic power by playing the game, as well as this ginormous skill tree. Now, when the game first released, the skill tree was just this area in the middle. It was very small. You were able to unlock everything very quickly, but they have expanded exponentially in the last year, making it to where there's actually skill trees per each character. Now, they only have a couple unlocked right now, but they're currently working on the other skill tree. And as you can see, this thing is absolutely massive. Now, your character levels up depending on what character you're playing at the end of the game, depending on how well you do. It's not something where like, you start at level 1 in Halls of Torment and you go up to whatever level each run. You actually keep this level for your character, and that's also a way you unlock a lot of different runes and achievements. And now, the skills in the skill tree. These are, your generic basic stats like, health, armor, EXP, damage, cooldown reduction, and then very specific things depending on what your character is. And as you can see, it's just massive, and one of the nice things about this game is that they are constantly developing it, so you don't have to worry too much about it. Now, achievements are very straightforward. You get them as you play the game. It's not something you really have to go out of your way to do, unless there's one like finishing a run in under 7 minutes, right? That's something that you're going to kind of go and have to try really hard to actually do. But the other ones are just like leveling up, killing a certain amount of mobs, on the map, things of that nature. And this is how you're going to unlock a lot of your abilities. It's how you're going to unlock runes. It's how you're going to unlock characters, as well as maps. And they have this achievements tab to kind of just explain how exactly you need to unlock all of these. Your achievements is also one of the ways that you unlock runic power, so that's going to let you equip more runes. Now, just hopping into the game, once you figure out which character you want to pick, you'll go into this select here. So in the beginning, you don't actually have all the maps unlocked. You'll unlock them as you play through. So you'll end up starting with this Scorching Valley. You'll see those little Roman numerals next to it, as well as a percentage. So as you play the game, you're actually able to add additional difficulty, and this is going to let you get additional materials and just unlock more materials as well. It does make the game harder, but it definitely is more enjoyable when you're playing with all these on, and you can turn certain ones on and certain ones off. And this is going to change the total curse intensity. As you turn these on and off, you're going to unlock materials that are available on the map. So if you play an easier difficulty, you're not going to be able to get legendary materials, for example. So it's that, risk and reward. If you try a harder, difficulty, you're going to be able to get more materials to make those higher level weapons. And it's not like it's extremely, crazy difficult for the most part. As long as you figure out the game as you play through these different levels of difficulty, you're going to have a pretty good understanding of what you need to do to actually beat these. So you're going to be able to unlock all those weapons. Don't feel like it's going to be something impossible. It's very straightforward. And basically, these different difficulties are going to unlock different achievements. You're going to unlock the other maps. You're going to unlock different characters. And so just progress through the game as you want. Every single map is going to have 7 different levels of difficulty with the same exact curses in each level. So it's not like you're going to run into something crazy new every single time you go into a new map outside of the map, basically. Different maps are going to have different materials, but the bosses are all going to be the same on this map. So the way the gameplay actually works is as you spawn in, you're going to have to kill a certain amount of mobs to spawn these lords. These lords spawn, and depending on what difficulty you're playing on, 1 to 5 bosses will actually spawn at the same time. So in the beginning, there's only going to be one boss, nothing crazy, but as you progress into the game and, turn on all those House of Lords curse, you're going to be running into 5 bosses at the same time. That's going to throw so many abilities at you. But as you go through, kill mobs, you're going to level up. You'll pick up those little gems on the ground, which, very similar to all the other games in this genre. As you level up, you have both active and passive abilities. You're able to equip 6 active abilities at the same time. And if you have a rune, you can equip 6 of the same one, but normally you'll probably be doing 6 different abilities. There's a lot of really cool synergies in the game, so that we have like different projectiles, you have elemental types, you have melee attacks, you have things that scale with health, armor, things of that nature. And there's a ton of debuffs. Debuffs are huge in this game, which moves us over to the passives. So once you figure out, what 6 active abilities you want, you can actually turn active abilities off so they don't spawn anymore. Granted, you can always just re-roll. So say you have a choice of 3 active abilities and you don't want any of them, there's always an option to roll to passives instead. So don't worry, you're not going to miss out if you don't turn on this little check bar. But I think it just makes your life easier to turn off active abilities, and then you only see the passives. And passives range from crit chance, crit damage, health, armor. Defensive stats I don't really recommend other than health because it's not really that good right now. But then you have a ton of different debuffs. So you got burn damage, poison damage, toxic, doom, bleed, hemorrhage, stun, daze. There's literally a cluster of different debuffs. And there's also a lot of passives that synergize the debuffs. So if you ever apply a bleed, you're also going to apply a stack of hemorrhage. Your debuffs can stack debuffs, which stack other debuffs. It's kind of crazy. You'll see that debuffs work really well. You'll put thousands of stacks of certain debuffs on different bosses once your HPs get up into the billions. And it's a very fun time. Not going to go into crazy detail, but you're going to really enjoy it. And then as you progress through the map, harder bosses will spawn, higher difficulty and higher HP bosses will spawn. And then lastly, once the 5th boss spawns and you kill the boss, you will win the game. So these bosses, they're going to drop materials for you to pick up. When you go through the boss crystals, it'll actually pull all the experience on the map to you. So don't worry about not, picking up every single EXP node. And that's going to be kind of the generic play loop basically for the beginning of the game. You're going to be farming up materials to unlock characters, to unlock the skill tree, to unlock weapons. And then as you play through and you unlock the higher difficulties and you really test out your builds and stuff like that, you'll move into playing the 2 extra game modes. So when you finish that last boss on a playthrough, you're generally given the option to go into different portals. There's a purple portal and there's a red portal, as well as a blue portal. Blue just takes you out. Purple puts you in endless mode, where you just constantly go through 5 maps over and over and over again. The difficulty doesn't scale ridiculously. It gets a little bit harder, but it's not anything crazy. So this is a really good way to farm materials and stuff like that. The red portal, however, is going to take you into this extra hard difficult mode where the boss HPs scale exponentially. By the time you're in the 7th and the 8th go around, so this is 40 maps in, you're going to be facing bosses with over 1 billion HP. This is why I say defensive stats don't really matter that much, because reducing damage or adding armor to a certain point doesn't really matter when they're hitting you for over 1,000. Your HP is going to generally stick around 100 to 500. 500 is you're very aggressive about picking up the health bonuses. But generally, you're not going to have that much HP. So after the 2nd or 3rd go around, you're going to be getting one shot very often. But don't worry, because there is a dash mechanic in this game. So unlike Halls of Torment, where if a mob hits you, you take damage, this game, every single mob has some type of attack animation that you're able to dodge away from. There are a ton of particle effects going on all the time. I'd recommend turning them down once you get better at the game because you're just going to have so much stuff going on. It is going to slow your computer down, as well as it's going to be very difficult to see the enemy AoEs, which are just, giant red things of different shapes and sizes. But even the most basic mob has to like start a swing at you. This isn't going to show you like an indicator of where it's going to hit because you have to be standing next to them for these really basic ones. But it's not like, if you run into them, they're going to damage you. No, they have to hit you. So you're able to dodge. You'll see in the middle of your character, you'll have dashes. Different characters have different amount of dashes, and you're going to be dashing constantly. So this is definitely more of a dodge game than it is like a kind of kite by running around type game, or maybe even standing in the same place. Once you get into, your like 5th go around or 6th go around, you're just like dashing in a circle, dodging all the thousands of abilities that are coming at you, while hopefully dealing damage with ranged or melee attacks. It's really, really fun. That is a very brief overview for you guys. I know I kind of went into a lot of detail, I feel like, for maybe like a basic overview, but that's kind of the gist of the game. I really feel like if you enjoy Halls of Torment or like Vampire Survivors, Soulstone Survivor is a very fantastic game for you. It has an endless play loop. You can change the difficulty whenever you want. And the abilities are very, very unique and enjoyable. They're very fun. You can do a lot of really stupid builds in this game. And I think that's what makes it so fun. You're not very limited. They have a ton of different abilities. So if you want to try out something stupid, there's a bunch of different iterations of the builds that you can go. And since it's been in development for a decent amount of time, they have a lot of content for you to go through. So if Halls of Torment was like your introduction into this genre, I feel like this is a great next step. The animation style and, the graphics are different. It's not that like dungeon diver, Diablo type, fantasy world. However, I feel like it has its own type of like charm to it. And it also has a very enjoyable gameplay loop. So if you guys want more information, let me know down below. I also have a ton of videos from last year when I was just making kind of some generic videos for the game. So if you want to see some of the things that were from back then, feel free to take a look. I really appreciate the support. Likes and subscribes are greatly appreciated. And as always, guys, I hope to see you on the next one.